Good afternoon. I'm Jess Norman, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon, which has been delivered by LexisNexis. Before handing over to our presenter, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping points. I need to advise you that this session is being recorded. Please ensure your microphone and camera are off. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Your answers will be answered during the Q&A question and will remain anonymous. However, if we do not have time to answer these may be addressed post-event should you provide your contact details. The MGAA's Programme of Learning and Insights has been accredited by the Chartered Insurance Institute for the quality of content and supporting materials, with CPD hours applicable if relevant to your ongoing professional development. The recording of this briefing will be available on our website and on the MGAA YouTube channel, with the PowerPoint presentation to follow post the event. Finally, I'll be posting a link to a feedback survey in the chat box. Please do take the time to complete this, which should take no more than 2 minutes, as this allows us to deliver the best quality events to our members. So today's briefing, the critical role of geospatial intelligence data in property insurance pricing, is being delivered by Caroline Elliott-Grey. So that's it for me now. Caroline, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for today's webinar, which, as Jess said, is on the critical role that geospatial intelligence data plays in property insurance pricing. So I am Caroline Elliott-Grey. I have been at LexisNexis for about 5 years now. I am a senior product manager responsible for our geospatial intelligence products. Prior to joining LexisNexis, I was at E.ON Energy for about 14 years, where I helped to refine several products as well as improve their digital online channels. So today's agenda, we are going to have a bit of a look at how climate change is impacting extreme weather events, and that's in terms of windstorm, flood and subsidence. Going to take a look at what is geospatial intelligence and why does it matter, and then how can geospatial intelligence help you to predict environmental risks. So there are 4 learning outcomes for today's session. So the first is to describe the role of geospatial intelligence data in predicting environmental risks, and then being able to explain about the predictions for flood and subsidence risks, specifically as an outcome of the ever-changing climate. Be able to summarise the power of perils data on trees, storms and basement risks. And lastly, outline how insights on perils risks combined with intelligence on property characteristics can help to build a clearer understanding of property risk for fair and accurate pricing. So the climate is changing, and we're all seeing the impact of this on a daily basis. So I think typically most people love a hot summer, but this doesn't come without consequence. Did you know that 10 of the UK's warmest years on record have occurred since 2002? So that's 10 of the warmest years ever recorded have taken place in the last 23 years. So from a UK perspective, 2023 was the second warmest year on record, and that came as a close second to 2022. So we really are feeling the impact of those warm years. And then in addition to this, 2023 was confirmed as the warmest calendar year in global temperature data records, and that's going all the way back to 1850. And then in contrast to this, which is where we are seeing that climate change is taking effect, is that 6 of the wettest years on record have been recorded since 1998. And we'll cover during this webinar the significance of this. We're also seeing that 1.2 degrees of warming has been recorded globally, which causes a concern as 2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature is recognised as the threshold at which climate change becomes dangerous. So today I'm going to focus on 3 perils which are changing as the result of climate change. So these are windstorm, subsidence and flooding. And the reason for this is that over the last 3 years, weather-related insurance claims have risen by 58%. And just last year alone, insurers paid out £585 million for weather-related damage as a result of these extreme weather events. So storm season in the UK runs from the 1st of September to the 31st of August the following year. And they're on average probably 6 or 7 storms in a storm season. So storm naming was introduced by the Met Office back in 2015 because they believed that by giving a storm a name, it's easier to track them on the TV, the radio, or on social media. So since storm naming was introduced back in 2015, the furthest that we've got through a storm season, so all the names are preset before the season starts. Furthest that we'd got through was Storm Katie in March 2016, and that was a total of 11 storms in a storm season. But this was broken during the last storm season, so the 2023 to 2024, where we saw a record-breaking 12 storms take place during that 12-month period. So let's take a look at the perils that are being impacted by all of these storms. So over the last couple of storm seasons, we have experienced some extreme weather events, which can bring extreme impact. Storm Babette took place in October 2023, and that lasted around a week, and it saw over 100 millimetres of rainfall take place in just 36 hours. River Rover also recorded a stream flow of 118 metres per second. So that equates to a return period of 200 years, and the storm caused widespread flooding, resulting in a total of 1,250 properties being flooded in England alone during the storm. So why did this storm happen? So Storm Babette was caused by a combination of factors. So that included a strong jet stream, and that's what helped bring the storm towards the UK. That was combined with warm sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic Ocean, and that's what provided the storm with the energy that it needed. And then thirdly, it had a large area of low pressure over the UK, and that's what helped draw the storm in. So a combination of those resulted in Storm Babette causing that significant damage. If we go slightly further back to February 2020, the quick succession of storms Kira and Dennis is estimated to have cost the insurance industry 363 million in payouts due to the record rainfall and high wind speeds. And then in the 2022 storm season, we saw 3 storms in just 1 week. So that was Storm Dudley, Eunice and Franklin. These storms brought with them 2 red weather warnings, which means that a dangerous weather is expected. And then some of the highest wind speeds that have been recorded in over 30 years. If we have a look at the storms from the last storm season, then we had Storm Aisha in January 2024, and that experienced winds of up to 90 miles per hour in some of the worst impacted areas. And this 4th storm of the storm season brought down trees and power cables, and it caused widespread travel disruption, leaving tens of thousands of people without electricity. So we really are starting to see the impact of these extreme weather events. Climate change will continue to drive an increase in windstorm activity over the UK. This image here is what we're seeing today for the impact that climate change is having on windstorm activity, and this will continue to increase over time. Understanding previous storm trends, specifically over a long time period, provides valuable insight into the areas of the UK that are vulnerable to high winds. So here we can see the maximum gust speed from the last 50 years of windstorm activity. The areas in the darker red are at the higher risk, and this risk is increasing with more frequent storm activity. In fact, the ABI estimates that future insured losses are expected to increase by 18% within the next 100 years, making this insight valuable when it comes to accurately assessing property insurance. The top areas of the UK that are prone to storms are the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, the western coast of the UK and Cornwall, but in fact it is the whole of the coastline that is vulnerable to these extreme weather events. And we continue to see the storms taking effect in this most recent storm season. So Storm Eowyn, which was the storm of the 2024 to 2025 windstorm season was a powerful extratropical cyclone that significantly impacted Ireland, the Isle of Man and the United Kingdom, and that took place on the 24th of January this year. So the storm brought unprecedented wind speeds and it was widespread damage across the affected regions. So moving on from windstorm, let's have a look at the impact that flooding could have on properties over the coming years. It's estimated that 325,000 properties in England are situated in areas that are the highest risk of surface water flooding in the next 30 years. The fact that the Met Office predicts that there will be 30% wetter weather shouldn't make this a surprise to us. And in fact, in total, 5.2 million homes and businesses in England are at risk of flooding. So that's 1 in 6 properties and demonstrates the need to understand the importance of the flood risks that we are facing. Historic flood events have led to a rise in sea levels by 11.4 centimetres over the last 30 years, demonstrating that it's not just surface level flooding that could cause an impact. And then we've just talked about the impact that Storm Babette had from a windstorm perspective, but actually it had an impact from a flooding perspective as well, with over 7,000 commercial properties and just over 51,000 residential properties being impacted by flooding as part of that storm as well. Let's look at some other examples of recent storms as well. So these images that you can see here are from a flooding event in London, where we saw this kind of heavy downpour event. This wasn't just traditional surface water flooding, which can be predicted with surface water flood scores, but it was also the backing up of the sewer system. So across urban areas everywhere, we've seen a decrease in permeable surfaces from an increase in population and urbanisation. In London, this meant that the Victorian era infrastructure couldn't cope with the increased amount of rainfall. So the overloaded drainage system caused pipes to back up into properties with basements, and that caused major losses of stock, it caused business interruption, and it caused water damage. This risk is also increasing, particularly in London, where we've seen over 5,000 new basements excavated in the last 10 years alone, which is further decreasing the permeability and increasing other risks like subsidence. This type of flooding event will become a more common occurrence as the rainfall patterns change. The changes in rainfall will also have a knock-on impact on other perils like subsidence. So here is an example of the increasing risk that we are seeing in Exeter. So Exeter is in the southwest of England and it's on the River Exe. This map here shows the current flood scores that we're seeing. And we can already see here that we're mainly seeing it has a medium flood risk and it's got a JBA combined defender score of between 4 and 9 in this area. If we move forward just 20 years, we can see that the whole southwest bank of the River Exe will be at very high risk of flooding. And this is primarily due to the current 1 in 100 year flood defence not being adequate by the year 2040. So the defences will no longer be able to cope with the amount of rainfall that the area is regularly expected to get. In this area, we can see that the 1 in 200 year flood defences have fared a lot better with a much smaller increase in flood risk. So this is the impact that we're seeing under RCP 4.5 in just 20 years' time, which is the medium or optimistic scenario. So it could be a lot worse. Another example, and something that fits in with building back better and trying to prevent the impact that we're seeing from these extreme weather events, is the Boat Inn in Shropshire. So this is a pub, and this pub has been marking its flood heights on its doors for over 100 years. So there are 29 flood markers in total. So 5 of them have been in the last 4 years and 16 in the last 10. So they have now prepared for these frequency of flooding by installing removable doors and the bars. That means that when it is due to flood, these can be moved upstairs when the flooding is forecasted, which makes it quicker to dry and recover after a flooding event. So what impact are we seeing on subsidence? So these extreme weather events will have an impact on subsidence too. By the year 2050, it's predicted that an additional 1.2 million households will be at risk of subsidence. And by 2080, 30% of households in Great Britain will be at a risk of subsidence compared to the 18% that's at risk today. The areas that will see the biggest risk or the greatest risk over this period are Swindon, Slough, Ipswich, Reading, Oxford, Darlington, Harlow and Milton Keynes. I will explore the shrink swell cycle in more detail, but nearly 80% of subsidence claims made in 2022 were following the summer heatwave. And then another large contributor to subsidence is trees, with trees being implicated in 70% of reports of subsidence and heave on clay soil. So the South East is the most prone, particularly with those properties that are built on the London clay. So tree roots spread considerably wider than the visible width of the tree foliage. And then in drought situations, they are prone to branch out in search of moisture. And that moisture can often be stored within the matrix of the clay soils. So when the roots drain the clay dry, the shrinkage takes place. And that's when disaster can ensue if the soil in question beneath is below a building's foundations. This problem can also occur as a result of human negligence. So for example, if building work reduces the amount of water an existing tree is able to draw from the ground, for example, by laying concrete across its root system. So if we continue just to focus on the trees for a moment, and the impact of these extreme weather events that can happen, we can see an example there. Fallen trees account for over 40% of storm-related claims that take place. So using insights to understand the tree type, the tree height, and the density of those trees will help in ensuring that the correct level of insurance is in place. As I mentioned, we would cover a bit more about the shrink swell cycle. So subsidence in the UK is primarily driven by the shrink swell cycle in those clay-rich soils. So in the wetter winter months, they swell up and they expand. Then during the dry summer periods, they will contract. Both of these factors will be exacerbated by climate change. We will see wetter winters and dry summers. The 300% surge in subsidence claims we saw in 2018, when we saw this exact mix of a wetter than average winter and then a warmer summer, will become a regular occurrence. The current areas impacted by subsidence are the clay-rich soils of the southeast of England, where these weather patterns are already common. A major cause of subsidence is dry weather. So during a dry spell, houses built on clay-rich soil suffer as the moisture is sucked away by trees and bushes. This causes the clay to shrink and the foundations to drop, causing structural problems. By 2050, the area where subsidence risk is probable will double, and this particularly is extending further north and west. And then by 2080, is expected to double again, with much of the south being at higher risk. And the area impacted by subsidence will extend further north, with Oxford, Cambridge and Peterborough at a much higher risk compared to today. The areas that are currently at risk today will also experience even more extreme conditions, driving more cases of subsidence. For example, in London, the number of properties at risk of subsidence is expected to increase from the current 20% of properties specifically at risk to over 50% by 2080. We're already seeing the impact that extreme weather events are having on the insurance industry in terms of the claims being made, but they're also hitting the headlines in recent times due to the rise in the cost of home insurance to cover these extreme events. As we've just talked through, these events will continue over time, so making it essential to understand the risks associated with these events to help manage those rising costs. So here we're going to delve a little deeper into some of the 6 top events, top storms that have taken place in the UK between 2020 and 2023. So the first was Storm Ciara. So Storm Ciara hit the UK in February 2020 with gusts of up to 97 miles per hour and bringing with that torrential rain, causing electricity outages, flooding and travel chaos across the country, with at least 20,000 homes left without power. The worst area impacted by that was the Isle of Wight. We then saw in December 2020, at Christmas time, Storm Bella. So this came and left hundreds of homes in Bedfordshire, Oxfordshire, Gloucester and Northamptonshire completely flooded as rivers burst with their banks, and then train services up and down the country were cancelled. Storm Darcy hit the UK in February 2021, and that blew an icy path across the UK, bringing deep snow to the southeast, especially Kent and Essex. The next of the big storms was Storm Arwen. So it was one of the most powerful and damaging storms in the UK this decade. Storm Arwen arrived in November 2021 and it caused a red alert for winds. Thousands of mature trees were felled, causing the death of 3 people in Cumbria, Aberdeenshire and Northern Ireland. It's thought that the unusual direction of the wind, so it was northerly this time, partly caused the environmental devastation as the trees had grown to withstand the normal prevailing westerly winds, and they weren't well rooted enough to deal with the 98 miles per hour gusts from the north. Millions of homes were without power as the trees brought down the power lines. Then February 2022 brought Storm Eunice. So the UK was on red alert during this storm. Schools were closed and roads were deemed unsafe to travel. Storm Eunice set a new record for the fastest wind gust recorded in England, with speeds of up to 122 miles per hour at the Needles in the Isle of Wight. And then in October 2023, we had Storm Babette that we've just been talking about. So Storm Babette stole the lives. It left thousands of people homeless, and as a result, businesses were significantly impacted, as well as the insurance industry having claims of up to hundreds of millions of pounds. So you can see the storms are widespread across the UK. So are storms really unpredictable? We can see here the variations in the number of storms that we see per storm season over the years. So the lower number of storms in 2022 to 2023 storm season was in part due to a weaker jet stream than usual during that period, meaning that less storms were directed to the UK. However, it is thought that climate change could bring about more regular storms, as a warmer atmosphere could lead to greater rainfall and more frequency. But the change in the overall number of storms is more uncertain, which is why it's key to understand what we can do to mitigate the impact of those storms. To help understand the risks that are associated with these events, LexisNexis offers a host of data that is available at point of quote through our Geospatial intelligence platform, covering numerous perils from crime and fire to subsidence and flood. And this is all at an address level. Access to this data helps build a picture of the perils and the risks at an individual property. What do we mean by geospatial intelligence data? So it's any perils related data such as flood, subsidence and wind, and the impacts that it has on a specific risk location. The geospatial intelligence data that's available via LexisNexis can help provide a comprehensive understanding of these risks. This will help insurance providers in setting accurate premiums based on the unique features of each location. This can be through the use of our visualization tool, so that's LexisNexis Map View, of taking the underlying data via informed quotes. Both methods give that comprehensive understanding of the risks. We've put a lot of investment into our LexisNexis Map View tool to give our customers the best visualization tool available that not only contains peril data, but it also enables them to upload their policy data too and give that understanding of their accumulations. Using geospatial data, the frequency and intensity of these extreme events or environmental risks can be predicted by looking at changes in temperature as an example, which then can be reflected in the insurance risk. Using geospatial intelligence data can help insurers to understand the risk of an individual property location to enable accurate premiums to be written. And lastly, by understanding past events and their impact, insurers can refine their risk models and make informed decisions about policy pricing and coverage. So as we approach the end of this webinar, we'll just recap on what the learning outcomes are. So by covering this information, hopefully you can describe the role of geospatial intelligence data in predicting environmental risks, explain about the predictions for flood risk and subsidence risk specifically as an outcome of the changing climate, summarise the power of perils data on trees, storms and basement risks, and outline how insights on perils risks combined with intelligence on property characteristics can help build a clearer understanding of property risks for fair and accurate pricing. So thank you for listening today. I will hand back over to Jess for a live Q&A.
Thank you, Caroline. Thanks very much. It's really interesting. We've got a couple of questions here. The first one is, what is the impact of building houses on clay-rich soil or land susceptible to subsidence?
So houses can still be built on these types of soil. What's really key is that the developer just needs to be mindful and use the correct foundations for the type of soil that they are building on.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything homeowners can do to minimise the impact of subsidence?
Property owners need to be aware of the impact of reducing permeable surfaces, so such as flower beds, and then replacing them with impermeable surfaces such as drives and paths. They should also be aware of the impact of planting or removing trees close to properties, which can all have an impact on the moisture profiles at that property.
Thank you. We've got another one here. Are costs to the insurance industry from extreme weather events expected to rise in 2025?
I would say using tools to understand the risk to a specific location when assessing a property will help to minimise unexpected rises in costs to the insurance industry. As we've discussed, extreme weather events are expected to continue, which by default will impact claims.
And what points of quote data or sources are now available through the platform on the existence of basements at property level?
LexisNexis Basement Indicator can be used to identify properties with basements. So insurers have faced massive losses following devastating flash floods in London and other UK cities, most recently in June 2023. These events are only going to increase. Properties with basements carry a high risk of surface water claims, especially in London where space is tight and water is nowhere to safely go. We can now instantly and accurately confirm if a property is or has a basement to support fair and precise pricing. So that cover is right for the risk and assist customers in flash floods.
Thank you. Just got a couple more here. Does the data include trees surrounding the property?
LexisNexis Risk Solutions provides Blue Sky's national tree mapping, which can be used to determine the trees that are surrounding a property.
Thank you. That's the end of the session. Really big thank you to LexisNexis and to Caroline for sharing your insights with our members today. We hope you've gained some valuable and practical takeaways from the session. Before we wrap up, if you haven't already, can you please take a look at the survey link in the chat box? Please take a moment to complete a feedback survey. This will be sent to you via email along with the session recording in the next couple of weeks. Please stay informed about our upcoming events. Visit the MGA website for the latest details. And just want to say thank you all for joining us and have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.